Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Stack and I would like to welcome you to the Parent Guide walkthrough for our ACE podcasts. We are so excited to be able to offer these podcasts to you. Let's get started. Before we begin going through the guide, I want to point out that the page numbers on the top right of my screen correspond to the appropriate page numbers in your parent guide. Let's begin by going over some of the vocabulary words you will need to be familiar with, starting on page 1. The first term is text structures. Text structures are the ways authors organize information in the text. There are no real synonyms for this, but some examples are cause and effect, problem and solution, comparison, and cause, problem, and solution. Then we have the main idea. The main idea is the most important information in the text. It tells what the text is mostly about. This is an essential ingredient in knowledge transformation and in building a powerful memory of the text. Some synonyms you or your child might hear are the words gist, central idea, or key idea. Some examples of this using the nursery rhyme Hickory Dickory Dock would be the cause is the clock struck 1. The effect is the mouse ran down. Summary. Summary is an extension of the main idea with supporting relevant details. So in our Hickory Dickory Dock example, the cause is the clock struck 1 while the mouse was on it. The effect is the mouse got scared of the sound and ran down. Inference. An inference is a conclusion or extrapolation about the text using clues from the text and one's own background knowledge. So looking at the picture here, what is likely happening? Well, we can see that there's grass with what looks like a blanket or tablecloth on top of it, along with a whole bunch of food. So using our background knowledge, we would say they're probably having a picnic. Vocabulary. Vocabulary is the meaning of words needed to comprehend or understand the text. The use of synonyms, or words that mean the same, antonyms, or words that mean the opposite, and kid-friendly definitions help kids to understand these words. Students may also need to understand how words are used in different contexts. In our example, there was a patient in the doctor's office. Signaling words. Signaling words are words that help you to identify the text structure. Some synonyms would be linking words or clue words, and some examples of this would be the word because. Then we have an example of the word resolved, and the last example is as a result. Graphic organizer. A graphic organizer is a visual that shows how two or more ideas relate to each other. In the examples, you'll see a matrix that shows cause and effect. Sentence stem. A sentence stem is a sentence that guides thinking. Words or phrases appear to be missing and need to be filled in. Some examples would be the problem is blank. So the only part that the student would have to worry about is what the actual problem was. So what exactly is reading comprehension? Children and adults spend a significant part of their day reading text in textbooks, newspapers, online, and on social media. Comprehension is the process by which important ideas from the text are selected and stored in memory for future use. Selecting important ideas, logically connecting the ideas together, and storing it inside the brain is quite a complex process. In classrooms across the world, students are taught to read the words fluently, understand the vocabulary, generate the main ideas or key ideas or central ideas, summarize what they've read, and infer meaning to help promote their comprehension. Through many years of strong research, the Texas A&M University Literacy.io team has established a powerful knowledge acquisition and transformation, or CAT, method to help students and their families become super readers. We hope you will use the information presented here along with the weekly podcasts to enrich your child's future. Well, we define text structures, but I'm still not quite understanding. So what are text structures? Imagine you're reading the Itsy Bitsy Spider and someone asks you what the main idea is. What would you say? Well, most children probably would not be able to respond correctly to this question. After all, main idea is kind of a hard thing to understand. But what if we ask them what happened to the spider? I can almost guarantee you they'll all say that it got washed out of the spout. Well, what caused the spider to be washed out? Most kids can easily say that the rain caused it. So in this simple nursery rhyme, we have a cause and effect text structure. We can reword this using a sentence stem to form a main idea statement. The cause is the rain. The effect is the spider was washed out of the spout. Most texts are organized using a combination of 5 text structures: problem and solution, cause and effect, comparison, description, or sequence. Recently, we have established a 6th text structure combining cause and effect with problem and solution: cause, problem, solution. Of these, problem and solution, cause and effect, cause, problem, and solution, and comparison are the most powerful, with sequence and description embedded within these higher order structures. Learning to use the higher order text structures helps students become critical thinkers, perform very well on tests, and transform their knowledge. Thus, the CAP method draws its name from this transformation of knowledge that happens when students learn and use the problem and solution, cause and effect, cause, problem, and solution, and comparison text structures. By teaching our kids to recognize these structures and use them to process the text, we can best support their reading comprehension or understanding. On page 3 of your guide, you'll see a chart with all of these higher order text structures, as well as some examples of text and real-life examples to go with each. For cause and effect, you have the Itsy Bitsy Spider. A real-life example, your shoes are untied, which is the cause, and it causes you to trip and fall, the effect. Problem and solution, Little Red Riding Hood. In real life, your trash can gets full, that's a problem, so you take it to the curb. There's your solution. Cause, problem, and solution can be found in the 3 Little Pigs. In real life, your child forgets his or her lunch. That's a cause, so she's going to be hungry at school. A big problem. The solution, he or she buys their lunch. And finally, comparison. Washington and Granny Smith apples is one of the articles that we're going to read. A real-life comparison could be the sun to the moon. Let's preview a useful resource that you're going to have: the text structure bookmark. You should have received a bookmark with your packet. This is a handy cheat sheet of sorts for the higher order text structures. On the following, you'll have some practice passages, starting on page 4. This sheet right here is a guide of how to work through these passages. You'll start with the vocabulary. You're going to pre-teach the vocabulary for the passage. Then you're going to read it. You're going to look for signaling words. Refer to your bookmark if you need to. Think about the text structure and write it down. Then create a main idea statement. And finally, practice inferring. Ask your child questions that require them to use their prior or background knowledge. So let's go through one of these together. On page 6, you have a short passage titled Washington and Granny Smith Apples. Let's read it. Washington and Granny Smith are both varieties of apples. They make healthy snacks and are full of vitamins. However, the apples have some important differences. Washington apples are dark red and taste very sweet, while Granny Smith apples are green and taste very sour. Which type of apple do you prefer? Now that I'm done reading, I have several questions I'm wondering. Did I read about similarities and differences of something? Did I read about something happening and why it happens? Is something bad happening? Was it solved? Do I see a cause for the problem? I'm definitely thinking that this might be comparison because I had 2 distinct topics, Washington and Granny Smith apples. It even talked about how they're the same and somewhat different. Let's look for some signaling words to confirm. The word however does show I'm comparing 2 things. And it says differences here. Plus, I see the word while. So this must be a comparison text structure. Now I can write my main idea. Washington and Granny Smith apples were compared on their health benefits, colors, and tastes. Great work. Let's continue our walkthrough. Next, you have the story of the three little pigs, beginning on page 8. I'm not going to read this one entirely, as it's also the text for our first podcast, but I will briefly explain each of the pages. Our story starts with three little pigs being sent out into the world. The first pig builds a house of straw or hay, which the wolf easily comes along and blows down. The second pig builds his house out of sticks. Again, the wolf comes along and blows this one down. The third little pig was a bit wiser, building his house out of bricks. When the wolf comes along, he's not able to blow down the brick house. The wolf then tries the chimney, where he falls into a pot of boiling water. The wolf runs away, and the pigs all live happily ever after. Sounds pretty familiar, right? As you go through this practice on page 16, think about the story and use the guiding questions to identify the text structure and write a main idea. There is also an inference question to try out. Why wasn't the pig scared when the wolf was on his chimney? Something to think about. On page 17, we have a short passage titled "The Reason for Falling Iguanas." In January 2020, the weather in Florida was predicted to reach the 30s and 40s. This is unusually cold weather for Florida. Because of the cold weather, the National Weather Service, or NWS, warned people that cold-stunned iguanas could fall out of trees without warning. Iguanas are cold-blooded. When temperatures drop into the 40s, it causes them to slow down or become immobile. The iguanas becoming immobile or not being able to move could result in them falling out of trees. Now it's time to circle the signaling words. Identify the text structure, write the main idea, and infer. On page 18 of your guide, you have an overview of our podcasts. In week 1, we'll have the three little pigs. In week 2, we'll have an untitled poem on the coronavirus. And in week 3, we'll have a podcast on Too Sick to Go to School. You must enter the phone number you registered with when you're answering questions in Poll Everywhere. That's how we're going to track your rewards. Page 20 has an overview of the steps you will take through each podcast in Lesson Guide. You'll start with your introduction. Then you'll move on to vocabulary. At the vocabulary spot, pause and answer a question in Poll Everywhere. The story will be read to you, but you'll also have the text, so that way you're able to read it along with your child if you're able. Then you can engage in some discussion. What signaling words did you hear? What was the text structure? Next, you'll write the main idea using the sentence stem and answer a main idea question in Poll Everywhere. Then you'll have a summary. Use the guiding questions to think through the summary and answer the question in Poll Everywhere. And finally, it'll be time to infer. Discuss the inference questions with your child. Your lesson guides start on pages 22 and 23. The lesson guides give you some information and guidance on each text and step in the text structure process. Here is one example of a lesson guide. The introduction will be read, but you're encouraged to follow along. After the vocabulary words are introduced, pause the podcast to answer the first 2 questions in Poll Everywhere. The first question will ask you for your phone number, and the second will be over vocabulary. Do not close out of the poll. You're going to need it again. When you're done, restart the podcast. The texts are included in this guide, but will also be read aloud. This section contains a few guiding questions for you when you finish reading or listening to the story. These are meant to help you identify the text structure. The next time you'll pause and go to Poll Everywhere will be when you are ready to answer the main idea question. A summary question follows this, but make sure you think through the questions to help you select details to add first. The multiple choice summary question is in Poll Everywhere as well. Finally, we've included a couple of inference questions on the guide. The ability to make inferences is critical for students. While these questions are not included in Poll Everywhere, We strongly encourage you to think through them with your child or your children. And don't be afraid to use those bookmarks to help you. That's what it's for. Well, that and marking where you are in the book. Think you might be ready for some more? Are you ready to continue the strategy with your child? Well, we have a guide for you to do that, beginning on page 34. This contains some pointers to help you implement this strategy with your child for any text. Reading with your child has so many benefits. We can't wait to hear your success stories. Thanks for joining us on this reading comprehension journey. We hope you enjoy this time spent with your child and look forward to working with you.